Hello, everybody. How are you all feeling? Happy? Well, as someone who has spent most of her life in the public eye, you might find it ironic that I'm not that comfortable talking to you this afternoon. And it's not that I have a problem talking. My mother tells me I'm very good at that. It's just that I'm a new kid on the wellness block, and to be sharing a stage with so many inspiring leaders is not only a great honour, but also slightly intimidating. If you would have told me when I was 16 that I'd be addressing a conference on happiness and the merits of finding balance, I would have laughed at you. When I turned sweet 16, the hormone-fueled, pimply-faced rebel in me was screaming to get out. It was 1977, and I was halfway through fifth form at Fort Street High School in Petersham, and I decided not only to quit my education, but also pack my bags and leave home as well. Understandably, my mother was horrified, but unbeknownst to her, I'd met an older guy, who a few years older than me, who said something along the lines of, "Oh, you're beautiful, you could be a model." And I was like, yeah, right, that old line, but of course I totally fell for it. And anyway, sometime later I walked into Vivian's modelling agency in Double Bay, and Viv said to me, "That smile will make $1 million, but that name is never going to work." Now, I have to let you into a little secret here. I was actually born Haylock. I was Debbie Haylock. And so anyway, she gets out the white pages in those days, and she's going through the H section, and she's going Hamilton, Hayward. She comes across Haylock, and she yells across the room to one of her bookers who's on the phone. And she goes, "Susie, what do you think of the name Deborah Hutton?" And Susie's taking a booking, she's running down figures, she couldn't give a rat's. She's like, "Yeah, it sounds fine." Viv just looked at me. I thought, that's it. That was the day that changed my life. I walked in Debbie Haylock. I walked out Deborah Hutton. And miraculously, my first job was the cover of Cosmo. I started off very simply as a girl from the burbs. I had a wonderful run modelling both here in the States and in Europe. And some great experiences. I travelled the world. I worked with Cindy Crawford and Sharon Stone before she got into movies. I dined with fashion royalty and even hung out at Windsor Castle with the royals. Along the way, I've met some really amazing people. Good old JT, as they call him at Qantas. He was a bit of fun. Omar Sharif, would you believe? Joan Collins. I've really worked with some extraordinary people as well. I did a radio show for a little while and managed to chat to the one and only Richard Branson. Pat Rafter, well, I'll just sit on that one for a minute because I just think about him and his jockeys, but I'll just get onto that in a minute. I've thrown footballs and been in a line-out with George Gregan. I've swum with Karen Perkins and driven cars with Peter Brock. I've even managed to play golf with Greg Norman. Pausing. And I've managed to also interview the one and only Hugh. I love this man so much numerous times. I'm just going to leave that, and that'll be the end of my speech. Just leave him. He's absolutely divine. But, you know, great things. I've cooked with Rick Stein. I've had lunch with Michael Caine, and shared an audience, a global audience, with the one and only Michael Parkinson. And it was 1988. It was the year of the bicentennial, some of you remember, in Australia. And one of the major events that it organised was a celebration of wool, and it was the bicentennial wool fashion parade in the concert hall of the Opera House. And it was going to be televised to millions around the world. Princess Di was out for it, every supermodel was booked for it, and every international fashion designer was taking part. Michael Parkinson was going to be the host, and I was going to be his co-host. Oh my God, Parky and me. It was my first ever live TV gig, and it was huge, and I went into absolute panic mode and studied everything to do with fashion and design because I didn't want to screw up, but I became like this walking encyclopedia. So it didn't exactly go according to plan. Michael, you know, in his casualness, you know, he's so effortless, and he goes, "Oh, so Deborah, you know, what do you love about wool?" And I'd sort of go, I'm thinking, this is my moment. "Well, Michael, Australian merino wool traces back to the early 1800s and has a much higher tensile strength than other yarns and therefore an excellent retention of dyes in the colouring process." And he's looking at me going, "What the hell are you doing?" I was so insecure, I turned myself into this sort of talking robot, full of knowledge, but absolutely no personality. I was too busy worrying about what everyone else thought. I wanted to be so perfect for everybody else that I just wasn't comfortable being myself. And I didn't have the courage to believe in myself. and it completely undermined my experience. And I think, for me, because I started so young, I was very young and insecure. And that's a beautiful thing about getting older, is that we have a greater acceptance of who we are, and we really don't care as much anymore what other people think. Hear, hear. And to this day, I've never been able to watch any of that footage. Whew. I've been incredibly fortunate. I've worked many years for iconic Australian companies, Myer, Holden. I was the face of Qantas for 14 years. I've hosted successful lifestyle shows on the Channel 9 network. I've been an editor for the Australian Women's Weekly and created a national homewares brand. And I was very happy back then, overly stimulated by outside influences, running from one thing to another, couldn't get enough, signing contracts, meeting amazing people, traveling the world, pinch me moments. I had a very different definition of happiness. I think it was very much pinned to external influences, and as we all know, that's impossible to maintain. And I think when you're in those formative years, you never really have a serious thought about tomorrow. You just think it's going to go on forever. You never really put it into perspective and appreciate sort of where you are and what you've achieved, those precious, precious moments. I had a very sobering moment in my late 40s. Most of my corporate contracts were coming to an end. There was no renewals in sight. I was managing myself and the opportunities were becoming scarce. And I was starting to think, Jesus, is this it? And what the hell am I going to do now? Mild panic set in. And I figure you come to a bit of a fork in the road. You either decide that you're just going to travel along and be a passenger, or you get in the driver's seat. I had to make a decision about how I was going to move forward at that stage in my life, and I needed to evolve. I knew I needed to challenge myself, and I know I needed to find a new happy. I had no interest in slowing down. I had way too much juice in the tank for that. I only wanted to go forward. And I figured looking for opportunities in the future is a far more energetic and positive space to be in. And I think I represent a great majority of women my age. We're all changing emotionally, physically, mentally. It's no more woulda, shoulda, coulda. It's a time in our life to pause for self-reflection, to actually tap in and see how we actually feel, and then go for it. I think after all these years, we probably owe ourselves a little bit of undivided attention. Women's primary role has always been that of the nurturer. That's in our makeup. It's the way we're structured. Women are mothers, wives, partners, daughters, sisters, neighbours, caretakers, mentors, negotiators, and friends. And up until now, it's primarily been about making sure everyone else is okay. But, with maturity comes wisdom and a chance to bring the focus back to yourself. And it's also a time to enrich our lives as we look towards the third age, and I'm speaking for women my age here, because this is our time to thrive. Yeah! So what is happiness and how is it measured? Well, I figure it's like a wonderful work of art that will never be complete, it will never be finished, that we just keep adjusting it. We add a bit of colour, we add a bit of texture, we put a wash over it. Sometimes we stand back and we think, I just want to chuck the whole lot out and start again. It will be a canvas that will never be complete. There's no formula to happiness. It's different for everyone, and it's very deep and it's very personal, and it also changes over time. I believe the trick is not to be afraid of change, but to find the courage to accept new ways. And I've discovered through my own personal journey that the best part is still to come. When we're younger, we think we know all the answers. The problem is we don't even know the questions. And as you get older, you appreciate how little we do know. And what I found out is that the world is full of people who can help you create your work of art, and in doing so, help you find the answers. About 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with a fairly serious skin cancer in my face and going into surgery. I didn't know when the bandages were going to come off what the hell I was going to look at. I never knew if I'd ever work on camera again. And afterwards, I decided to talk about the seriousness of skin cancer in the media. I wanted people to know and to be aware. And I was inundated with people contacting me with wonderful, beautiful messages of support, but also questions. Questions about, surgery, and they were talking to me about their skin cancers, and dermatologists, and makeup, and diet. And around the same time, I was turning the big 5-0. Whee! And to celebrate the occasion, I was asked to go nude for the January body issue of the Australian Women's Weekly. I mean, doesn't everybody do that? And oh yes, there was plenty of questions asked of me on that one. Also, thankfully, plenty of support. These two events actually created a bit of a watershed moment for me, really through the blunt awakening of social media and the power. And it was the first time I could actually engage directly with people with no barriers. I didn't have a manager, and it was just no walls in between. And I discovered that, like me, there was a lot of people out there seeking advice, wanting to know answers, wanting to grow, to connect, and to learn more. Balance by Deborah Hutton was created not so much for getting the answers, but for asking the questions. And I'm fortunate that my profile allows me to sit down and talk to some extremely stimulating, successful people and getting their insights, their invaluable insights and their knowledge. And the beautiful thing is that by sharing these conversations, I've been able to help others. And I think it helps you really reflect on your own life, to ask yourself the questions. So balance is built around the 8 fundamental keys that really determine how we live: body, relationships, work, mind, home, beliefs, and emotions. And the guts of the information we gather is drawn from a stable of coaches and mentors that I greatly admire and respect over their chosen fields. We've sort of got our nappies off, but we're a toddler, we're walking, we're over 18 months old now. We have over 120,000 people tap in and listen to these conversations. Over 2 million people have read our posts. Importantly, I stand for women and some guys who are north of 40, a beautiful period of life. This is a great age where we have the confidence to ask the questions, to seek out advice, and to ask for help. It's no longer what everyone else needs. They've grown up and left the house. Most of them have, or you're trying to get them to leave the house. Maybe you've left the house. It's about empowering you to look into your own life and create the future happiness that you want. Balance by Deborah Hutton has become an invaluable resource of information to help you define your future and figure out what you want in it, and importantly, what you want out of it. We survey our followers quite often and just to see how they understand and feel about balance in their life. And interestingly, they measure their success by 3 things: the ability to provide for their family, to be debt-free, and to have the holidays they want. Very simple, fundamental things to most of us. But when we ask them which of the keys, out of those 8 keys, was the most important to them and the most relevant, emotion was. And what is emotion? Happiness. So when you think about it, there's a bit of a conflict there already, isn't there? We measure our success built around money and what it offers. But do we want to be rich or do we want to be wealthy? Something I discussed recently when I sat down with author and speaker Dr. Dane here on his recent Australian visit. He defined rich as material wealth, but wealthy as emotionally rich. And I love that. Balance by Deborah Hutton is about listening to what works for other people. You know, something you hear, something just clicks with you. You might even reinforce your own beliefs. And over the many interviews I've had, some have really sort of hit home for me. I had the chance to sit down and speak to the very funny and divine Julia Morris. She said, "I'm becoming the best version of myself I've ever been. It just seems I'm getting bigger, better and better." Beautiful Rebecca Gibney. This is what her father said to her, and she's always lived by it: it's better to be kind than right. A lot of you would know John O. Fisher, yeah? From the Wake Up Project. His religion is kindness. One kind person multiplied by 1,000 creates a kindness revolution. The gorgeous Elaine Beachley, she does something every day for herself because she figured she's got to help herself first before she can help others. Marina Pryor tries to embrace the philosophy that she wants to be better yesterday than she was, and she wants to keep getting better and better. And Olivia Newton-John, God love her, she's a mentor. She's one of the first people I interviewed. I was talking to her about insecurities, and she said, "I wasn't trying to be anything. I was just trying to be myself. And you can't create an image, you are who you are." You know, it's funny, a few years ago when I thought my career had hit the skids, this project, funnily enough, has allowed me to pull together all the skills that I have sort of built over my years, a lifetime of learning: journalist, producer, editor, host, lighting designer, hair and makeup artist. I find I'm busier than I've ever been and probably more relevant. I love that saying that if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Lisa Wilkinson, I was talking to the other day, that's one of her favourite sayings. I think you're lucky if you have a passion in life at a very young age because you know that that's where you're going. Nicole Kidman, I read an article years ago when she said she always wanted to be an actress from a very early age. I thought, well, that's easy because that's your path, you just follow it. It was never my passion to have the life that I've led. I was never driven to be a model or work in TV. It was just a means to an end. And I just followed sort of one job to the other, blindly creating who I was along the way, you know, being seen to be successful, being seen to fit in. I'm often asked what my secret to success has been, and it's very simple. Turn up on time, know your lines, and have respect for everybody. My happiness was intrinsically connected to how other people saw me. But now, my happiness is very much how I feel about myself, and I work at it daily. And passion gives me the confidence to pull it all together. Balance is about taking responsibility for your own definition of happiness and recognizing that it cannot be achieved by just sticking yourself on autopilot and following a straight line. It's a bit like being in charge of your own vessel, right? You sit out on a fine day, the sails are trimmed, the sea is calm, we get all that. Next moment, you're in the Sydney to Hobart, and the waves are crashing across the bow, and you've got to batten down the hatches. And then at some point, you have to decide which tack you're going to take. At times, fear will slow you down, and then sometimes you will be alone in the silence of dead calm. Happiness is being mindful of how you navigate these forces to create your own life balance. So what have I learned? Never dismiss your dreams. Always continue to search for knowledge and have the courage to believe in yourself. And I learned that from Michael Parkinson. Importantly, never underestimate the power that you have to create the happiness and the future happiness that you want. And you will always be challenged to do that. Happiness isn't an ending. It's constantly evolving. Even happy people have sad days. We all know that. And we all go through hard times, and that's okay. It's understanding that it doesn't have to rule your life. It's about making a conscious choice for it not to. This is my family. That's my mum, Del. Both of my brothers have passed away in the last couple of years, which has been devastating. And I'm sure a lot of people in this audience know what it's like to lose someone very dear to you. You never get over it. You just get to live with it. But it reminds you how fragile we are and that we just hang by a thread and you have to value every moment. My oldest brother, David, left two beautiful boys behind, little Josh and Jack, who you've seen the photo there, and they're absolutely adorable. And what I've learned is that human beings have an amazing capacity to cope, and that life is precious, and we have to value every single moment. And even in the most tragic of circumstances, and it might take a while to find it, but there's always an upside, and you can choose to find joy. And when I asked my partner, Rob, his definition of happiness, he simply said, someone to love, something to do, and something to look forward to. Don't you love that? The simplicity of that. I love that. And I'm reminded of this on a daily basis by the unconditional love that I receive from my gorgeous dog, Billy. Just reinforces the simple beauty in life. And you know, maybe we should take our cues from a 6-year-old Bichon Shih Tzu. I mean, look at that face for happiness. So I will leave you with the words that define every day for me. Live each day like it's your last, because one day you'll be right. Thank you.